Hi everyone, Mike Holmes here. This is the Know Your Reno podcast, where listeners will hear from experts from Improve Canada.
Hi, my name is Olga, and I'm the host of the Know Your Reno podcast at Improve Canada. Today, virtually in the studio with us, we have Janet from Simply Swing Decor. She's also the National Chair of the Decorators and Designers Association of Canada, and she is going to chat with us about how to hire a designer and the process that you should be going through when looking for a designer for your next home renovation.
Thank you, Olga. It's a pleasure to be here and representing the organization DDA Canada, as well as providing insights and information based on my own experience in the decor and design industry. I work with clients in a variety of capacities, whether it's refreshing one room and they're looking for new furnishings and colors and layout and style, or a whole renovation, whether it's a kitchen or a bathroom. And I particularly focus on clients who have need for accommodation due to an illness or a physical disability or auditory, vision issue, cognition issues. So it's particularly of interest to multi-generational families where you're trying to accommodate children and, access to sinks and counters, as well as the older generation living in the house. So those are always fun projects to work on because you're looking at things from a number of different perspectives and how you can provide safe access in the kitchen and bathroom, even moving through the home in terms of how it's laid out and styled.
So what are some of the most important considerations when people are embarking on a major home renovation project?
I think it's important to find, first and foremost, a decorator or designer that you can work with. And, they can have a wonderful portfolio, but as with many situations, you want somebody that you can have a really good rapport and relationship with, that will listen to you and understand what your needs and goals and desires are, and really understand what your vision is and help you bring that vision to reality.
I've noticed that you say designers and decorators. Is there a difference between the two? Is there one that's preferable in some circumstances over the other?
Not necessarily. I mean, there are some decorators who, like to select furnishings, finishes, decor accessories, and so forth. And then there are some who want to do the actual design work with the layout and placement of electrical sockets, doorways, actual developing a floor plan. It really does come down to a personal preference and what kinds of services the person wants to offer.
When we are thinking about, electrical, we don't often think of interior designers as playing a role in that, but could you tell us why it's important for interior designers to sort of be aware of everything that's going on, maybe behind the walls or anything that's not visible?
It really comes down to how the client is going to use the space and who's going to use the space. That relates to lifestyle as well. So if the room is going to be a quieter space where they're going to do reading, that type of activity, you want to make sure that you've got electrical sockets, for example, in places where it makes best sense to have a lamp. And that's one of the challenges when you go into an older home to do some updates. There weren't the same number of electronic items as we use in our day-to-day life now. So essentially end up having to bring in an electrician to start adding in. But before that, you have to, like I say, look at lifestyle and who and how the space is used.
I'm Mike Holmes. I've been trying to educate people on how to build it right, how to prioritize your renovations, and how to pick products and materials that will last. We love speaking to the Improve experts about how they are supporting the skilled trades. This is important to us, and it takes a whole community to stand behind the effort. Visit improvecanada.com to start your home improvement project the right way. Subscribe to the Know Your Reno podcast to learn more about how to renovate it right. And if you do see me at Improve Canada, please come by and say hi. Hope you enjoy the podcast and keep making it right.
In your own personal work, what are the considerations that you make, and what is the process like for you to work with a client?
First, I would do a up to a half hour discovery call with a potential client, just to find out what their project is, what their goals are, what their budget is. You want to make sure that it makes sense and that it's realistic. And then that gives me an opportunity to see if it's a client that I would like to work with, or if we're a good fit. Following that half hour phone call, they do want to work with me. And I want to work with them. I set up an appointment so that I'll go out, I'll spend a couple of hours with them, walk through the space, talk to them about their goals, likes and dislikes, who's going to use the space, when they're going to use that space. Ask about budget, which is really an important aspect of it as well. And from there, provide them with a report with some possibilities and some options that they might want to entertain. From there, if they want to move on to the design stage, then that's where we start to do measurements. We start to look at specific products and colors and finishes, look at doing floor plans.
And from the consumer side, or from a potential client side, what is the best way to prepare for working with a designer and prepare for, undertaking something like this that's oftentimes an invasive project?
From my perspective, in starting to work with them, and I always ask if they have any photos or magazine pictures of something that they really like, because it's not always easy, in my experience, for clients to really articulate what it is that they want or how they want their space to look. And so we talk about that, but then having pictures is very helpful too, because it gives me a sense of what that vision looks like. When I go into a space, I always want to know what's staying and what's going. If a client can give some thought to that, that's always helpful. And of course, colors. One thing to talk about it, and I've had clients say, I just want it fresh and updated. And when you start to pick away at that, that really helps you understand, because what fresh and updated to me means to me is quite different than what it might mean to them. I've had a client say fresh and updated, and what does that look like to you? Well, shades of, grays and pale blues. And as we got working through the process together, what they really ended up wanting was fresh paint, but it wasn't blues and grays like she had originally said. It ended up being, creams and some taupes and that sort of thing. So it's really important for them to have a clear idea of what it is they want. We can fine tune that. We can talk about it and talk about what's possible, but just some idea, and of course, budget. I think it's important for clients to really understand what resources they have available to them, and that's to prevent overrun, but it also prevents disappointment, because if they see something that they really like and they want to replicate that, and then find out that it was, let's say $30,000, but their budget's $5,000, you have to manage that expectation.
When it comes to budgeting, it's also, such a it should be such a meticulous process, because I know oftentimes things come up in the budget that we don't often think about. And I would love to just touch on some of those things that, of course, if we're doing something like a kitchen renovation, we think cabinetry, we think appliances, like those are all the things that we consider. But what are some of the things that we may not consider that do play a role in the budget?
There's a number of those instances. I mean, you can design and select product and finish, and it all looks wonderful. And until you start those renovations and you start the construction, you really don't know what you're dealing with, especially in a renovation as opposed to a new build. Some of the examples that I've run into is just replacing countertops without cabinetry. And the base cabinet looks fine, but then when you start to measure up, do the laser templating for granite counters or quartz counters, come to realize that the base cabinets aren't level. That's one of the situations that can be a challenge. And, there's a little bit of cost overrun there so that you can accommodate that. Replacing tile floor. And until you start removing the old tile, it's very difficult in some situations to understand how thick that tile is. So if you select a different tile and it's thicker or less thick, then there's the transition between types of flooring. Sometimes, there's electrical or plumbing work that needs to be done once you start pulling things apart. There was one renovation we were doing, and there was a built-in hall closet in the entranceway. that was coming out to make room for a small mudroom, if you will, and the contractor started pulling out the closet to find out there was an old receptacle in there that was still live. We had no idea because it was hidden in behind the walls. Fortunately, the homeowner never did have a fire, but you run into these kinds of things that are going to take a little extra work, and there's often no way of seeing them or understanding that they're there before you start.
I guess it's really best practice to leave a little bit of wiggle room, right, in your budget for things that come up. And especially, one that I know I've encountered personally is just even product removal, right? So removing that old tile, that old flooring, that's got to go somewhere. And there's costs associated with that. And I feel like a lot of people don't know that because that's not something they encounter, or they don't think about that. But it's often those hidden things that really, really add up. And they're the ones that can, be the difference between staying on budget and then going over and not knowing how you're going to cover that portion.
Exactly. And that's a perfect example, because there are disposal fees these days. Sometimes there's environmental fees on new products that you're purchasing. It's one of the things too, you can always talk to the trade that's doing a particular piece of work to see if the disposal is built into their price, or is it over and above? The rule of thumb typically is about a 10% budget overrun. I like to put it at around 15% because there's always something that you didn't anticipate. So you've got that little extra buffer in there to accommodate any of the change requests that you have to make.
As a designer, what is your primary function?
Once you've got the design completed and you start to do the renovation, or the trades start to do the renovations and so forth, that's where you play that key pivotal role between the trades and the homeowner. So if the trades are underway and they run into a situation or something that we hadn't anticipated, and they have to figure out a resolution to that, that's really that liaison role that the designer plays to try and come up with some solutions, to go back to the homeowner and present those solutions, and kind of facilitate between homeowner and trades to ensure that we come to an agreement or a solution that's going to work well. The other thing too that designers do, and the advantage to hiring a designer to work with a homeowner, we have a lot of relationships, and we spend a lot of time and money and effort to develop relationships with product companies. And there are a number of companies that deal with only the trades. They don't deal with the public. And so having access to that, bring those opportunities to the homeowner. And it's everything from custom furnishings, access to different products than they would see in stores or online, international product companies that don't necessarily have a bricks and mortar store in Canada that we can deal with and bring in something unique. And homeowners are looking for that. They want something that's not cookie cutter. They're looking for something that's unique and works with their personality and their style.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's especially relevant and important now, as we are spending so much more time in our homes, and we want that to be the embodiment of who we are and our personalities. So I do think that that's very important, and it also seems like it would save a whole lot of time and headache for the homeowner, because I know it's very popular to say, I'm going to design my own space and then hire a contractor and they're going to execute and it's going to be amazing. I'm going to save so much money. But that may not always be the case, especially as problems arise, as you are forced to think of solutions that you hadn't considered. I would imagine that designers, they go through training and updating their training, right? So that they are equipped to handle something like that, whereas a homeowner might not be.
Well, exactly. And interior designers and decorators are always doing training. I mean, we've had to come through a program at some point, post-secondary study, and then there's always ongoing training required to keep up your accreditation or certification. But that's how we stay on top of not only products that are available and trends around colors and styles, but what's new in terms of legislation, what's new in terms of building codes, those types of things. And the other thing too is, when I talk about the trades, most designers that I know, they have their go-to trades, and we just like product companies and suppliers, we spend a lot of time identifying the trades we want to work with and developing those relationships. And so you have that trusted partnership, whereas homeowners don't necessarily have those relationships. And so they might hire a contractor that's maybe not as reliable or as professional. And we've all heard some horror stories around that. And that's another thing that designers bring is those relationships and those trades and the trusted contractors that they typically use on their projects.
So really, when you're hiring a designer, you're not just hiring a designer, you're hiring a whole vetted team that, you can just put your full confidence in and be sure that the outcome is what you want.
Yes. And that's a good question for a homeowner, when they are considering engaging an interior designer. Do you have, a team of trades that you like to work with?
Do you have any best tips or practices for hiring the trades and figuring out who you want to work with, especially who you want to, let into your home?
So, I think a homeowner, if they're doing it on their own, I would certainly be asking for a number of references. I know the rule of thumb is 3. Personally, when I'm having work done on my home, I want 4 or 5, and I want to talk to them and I want to see what was done. The other thing, and it's a safety precaution, and it's something that I know not many think about, but are they insured? Do they have workers' compensation? Do they have all the proper licenses? Are they a registered business? And it's the nitty gritty that we just want to get to the pretty stuff, but it really does protect you more as a homeowner to ensure that you've got somebody who's coming in that is professional and is serious about their business.
In recent years, we have seen a lot of developments with COVID and a lot of changes that are kind of coming to the design and the home renovation landscape. Are you seeing any new trends emerging, especially when it comes to, living in place and spending more time in our homes?
It's been a really interesting time. And what we're seeing is homes have a lot more meaning than just your basic home. They're now home offices and their home gyms and their classrooms and their vacation homes and all those sorts of things. And what we're seeing particularly is your yards being an extension of your house. So if we're not able to travel, and we haven't been able to for a couple of years now, people are investing a lot in their homes, and particularly outdoor spaces. So, we're seeing outdoor rooms, kitchens, which are just beautiful. It's beyond the barbecue sitting on the deck. They're building a kitchen, living, dining area in the outdoors, and some beautiful products available to design and furnish those. That's certainly very popular. Media rooms and TV rooms have been strong for a while now, and they're just getting even more so, the whole theater concept for families.
So it seems like we are kind of taking everything that we're used to doing outside of our home and trying to bring that in as much as possible and have it all be within one vicinity, so we really don't have to go out and we can continue spending more time in our homes.
Exactly. And certainly, interior, we've been seeing a lot of home office renovations or this construction of a home office. And while some are returning to the office or have returned to offices, there's a lot of organizations that are just asking their employees to continue working from home. So what was temporary, we're now seeing people consult with decorators and designers and say, okay, we want to formalize this and make a proper home office.
And I imagine now in real estate listings too, one of the things that a lot of people are going to be looking for is already an existing home office. So that's going to play a role in a variety of industries now.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. Janet, it was such a lovely discussion, and it was so informative, and I'm sure it shed a lot of light on why this is, such an important consideration when you are taking on a huge undertaking such as a home renovation project.
Good. Well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciated the conversation and the opportunity to talk about the profession.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Know Your Reno. If you would like to get in touch with today's speaker or any of our large number of showrooms at Improve Canada, please check the description for a link to book an appointment with us at Canada's largest home improvement center. Don't forget to keep in touch with us on our socials, and we will see you next week for another value-packed episode to make your next home renovation a breeze.